Welcome to Beyond the Guidelines, the podcast that takes you past the listings, the programs, and all the polished sales talk to reveal the real people shaping today's real estate world. Here we uncover the personal stories, struggles, and wins that define each guest, giving you a fresh, human perspective on the business. At Creative First Mortgage, we're on a mission to help you see the person behind the professional, because real estate isn't just about the deals, it's about connection.
Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Guidelines. Today, I am pleased to have my good friend Jeremy Griffin on with us to discuss a little bit about his business development and marketing company called Startup Street. So Jeremy, like I said before, I'm going to introduce you with your purpose, which you just put simply Startup Street. So I love it. I know that you're super invested in the company. So tell us a little bit about what you got going on over there and introduce yourself.
Yeah. So yes, that's the company. And yes, that's a big purpose in my life. We do a lot of, all the information is obviously on the website, but do a lot of product launches and company launches and website development and website rebrands and marketing stuff, all sorts of cool things. I've built it out over the years to kind of be as much of a one-stop shop as possible without spreading everything too thin. The chances are if you want to do something and it's not in the wheelhouse at the shop, I've probably got somebody that's, I've referred repeatedly and I'm very comfortable with. So
how did the idea or the movement with Startup Street kind of start for you? What kind of launched that?
Well, it wasn't always called Startup Street. It's only been called Startup Street for probably, I don't know, maybe 10 years at this point. Had various other names before that as I was going through the natural ins and outs of the journey, if you will. But I don't know. I grew up working with my uncle doing construction and, working on houses and stuff like that. And I just really enjoyed, I liked the work, but I really enjoyed just the thought of trying to grow things and organizing it and all that kind of stuff. And then when I was about 20, I think maybe 20, 21, I went out on my own and started, working solely for myself, doing a lot of that work. And then like anybody else, it's like, I went to school at MCC because I was like, I have a lot more to learn about business. I don't know what that is, but I know I have a lot more to learn. So I'm going to go start taking some night class and stuff. And I had this one professor, and he would start every class the same way. He would have all of us write down, what he deemed as our most ridiculous idea that we, anything that we could think of. And then he would have us all just start, announcing what they are basically in the class. And no matter how crazy it was, he could figure out a way how you should position it. Maybe this is what you want to name it. Here's the distributors in that industry that you might want to think about. This might work for wholesale. I mean, it didn't matter what it was that you said. He could go wild with it. And I was like, you know what? I love this guy. And I was like, I want to be that guy. And that's kind of what set everything in motion. And then, like most people, it kind of just starts the same. You're just looking for any kind of little odds and ends to do for people. When you're young, like I'll make your business cards for you and just anything. Right. And it's just kind of all gone that way. Right. Over the years where now here I am later, it's like 25 years later. And I'm like, wow, I've done a lot. It's been a very interesting journey for sure. So.
Yeah, it's fun to kind of look back like that and you don't recognize how far you've come. I see that in a lot of these conversations where people look back and they go, man, this is where I started. And I did not see where I am now as being the end game.
100%, man. And I think it's really important too, to remind yourself sometimes when you're feeling down, like 15 years ago, I would have killed somebody to be doing all the types of things that I'm doing right now. Like that's what I wanted. Right. But then you're there And you're like, oh, I thought it was going to be a lot more glamorous than this. And you know what I mean? And all that. And you lift your expectations continue to go up, and they just keep going up no matter what it is you're doing. So like, I think it's really important to take a step back every now and then and just kind of remind yourself of exactly what you're saying. Like, how far has everything come? And if somebody painted this picture 15 years ago, 20 years ago and said, yeah, you'll be doing that, would you be excited or not? Like, if you actually wouldn't, then yeah, maybe there's a problem. But assuming you're putting in the work, yes, you probably would have been pretty excited about that.
Yeah, we just did Jason and I just did an episode on that about just being able to realize some of the wins that we've gone through, and you know, just like sitting in a quiet room and just like letting that stuff kind of flood through and realize that is super important. And then it also kind of recenters you, you know, like you mentioned, like the expectations keep changing or growing, and it kind of helps you like recognize like, okay, I'm going to meet that expectation too. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, but eventually, if I continue to work in that direction, I'm going to get there. And that it's such an important mindset.
As long as you stick to the plan and you focus on just doing a really good job, I think things tend to take care of themselves. I think that's a problematic thought for a lot of people these days, is they don't have much of a long-term look on things, and their desire for the shortcuts really has a negative impact on just making sure that what it is you're doing right now turns out as good as it possibly can. And as long as you just keep doing that, I mean, usually these things will all take care of themselves. Not to say that things don't happen or whatnot, but you know, it's pretty simple if you can just keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's such an important outcome, and recognizing, you know, you mentioned sticking to the plan, but then also being adaptable, right? Like recognizing like if something's not working and giving yourself the runway. You know, a lot of people, you mentioned like I looked at it as sort of like instant gratification, right? Like we've got this world of, I can pull up whatever I want on my phone and get an answer in less than 30 seconds. And that makes it difficult to kind of run that thought process through. But being able to recognize like, oh, if I'm going down a path, well, if you've only been going down that path for a week, you can't really say if it works or not. But you got to get 60, 90 days out of trying one thing.
That happens so often, man. People they've got like 5 or 6 things, you know, that they're trying to all try out. They're not really focused on any one of them. 12 months goes by. How to work out? I don't know, you know, but then when you really start talking to them, it's kind of like, well, of course it didn't work out that good. I mean, you got to be able to see things through, and it's tough these days. So, I mean, my goodness, the amount of opportunity out there with the internet and everything is just endless. You've got all sorts of people just constantly promoting the next newest, greatest thing to you to try out and all this stuff. And it can definitely be challenging to stay focused on just the blocking and tackling of the day-to-day. You know, every great company handles that. It's just like every great sports team, right? Handles the fundamentals very, very well. And if you just continue to focus on the fundamentals, you'll get growth. When you just blow off the fundamentals, usually nothing happens very good on a long-term basis. So
yeah, it's that's definitely a great way to look at it, is just the fundamental aspect. So with that in mind, you know, as far as Startup Street goes, what does that look like on the day to day? Like, what are you doing inside the business or
the fundamentals?
Yeah.
So I would say that the fundamentals of that are, you know, attention to detail, making sure that things don't slip through the cracks. You know, because we've got projects we're working on, but then I've got so many clients I've worked with, and then they're always reaching out with just smaller stuff that they need. And you've got to make sure that everybody's keeping track of all of it, making sure that the emails are timely, making sure that they're instructive and educational, making sure everything continues to get done properly at a high level, even if, like, you know, let's say one of the guys is working on like 2 big projects, and then all of a sudden like 2 small things from previous clients come through and they need to get done. It's like, yeah, we all understand we would, in a perfect world, we would like to just focus on just that one thing, right? But like it doesn't work like that. So you got to shift back and forth. And sometimes I think that can be challenging. It's the same thing as every other company, right? Like I'm really not a big fan of platitudes and all of that, well, what's the one thing that I'm like, listen, man, everybody's so different and all of their industries are different and their goals within the industries are different and the business models are different. It's very hard to really provide anything of value with that. But if there ever was one that I agreed with, it's the juggling. It is the juggling in business and managing the people that work with you, the people that you're working for and your vendors and all this stuff. And then on the other side of it, you've got to juggle your whole entire personal life too. I think that one catches people off guard a lot of times when they're not used to it. It's the juggling on the day-to-day for the fundamentals. I mean, I guess that's the best way to put it,
Yeah, for sure. That's you hit the nail on the head for, every business owner ever in the entire history of the world is, everybody does different things, and you got the foreground stuff and the background stuff and I
like to say the juggling too, because there's going to be some times where you just feel like a damn clown in the middle of a circus trying desperately to keep it all together. But I mean, that is the skill set, and you can call, management basically is what it is. And a lot of times people like to debate, like, what's more important, operations or marketing, sales or management and all that. And I'm saying this has, worked with all sorts of different types of people at this point and everything that the marketing and sales is obviously really important. Okay. If you don't have any sales, you don't have a company. I get that. But at the end of the day, the results that you get and how you run it is what ultimately is going to dictate the success on the long term. Because if you can't continue to do things to the point that people feel comfortable referring you to their friends, and that's a tall order. People don't understand how good of a job a lot of times you have to do just to get there. But if you can't continue to operate in that fashion, you're just constantly chasing sales then, right? Constantly chasing sales, you get them in. Usually that mindset becomes almost like a self-perpetuating snowball of crap almost, where it's like, you're just going to get it in. And then, it gets taken care of and down the road they go, but we've got these other two coming in, and it's very detrimental in the long term. So I always say that how you run it and the results are always the most important thing. If you just do that right, everything usually takes care of itself over time. It's not to say you shouldn't do any marketing. That's not to downplay the effectiveness of marketing at all. But if we really had to look at everything out there and determine which one is more important, I think it's no contest. And I say that as somebody who does this with people,
Right. Yeah. And you do, I'm sure you've got inside your structure of database marketing and that kind of stuff. And that to me, where you talk about, being able to take care of those clients and delivery would be, I guess, the term that in the industry is being able to deliver. And once you get to that point, then everything sort of becomes easier as far as chasing the sales, because like you said, you're getting to word of mouth referral, and as long as you've maintained the database to a certain extent, you can now follow up with those people. And then you don't have to chase new people. You've already got people in your system that you can trust. And in real estate, that's one of the most important pieces, I feel like, because for instance, for me, when rates drop, I get to call my past clients and go, hey, there might be an opportunity to save you some money here. And I don't have to go search out and try to get somebody else to get to the level of trust. It's a comfort level.
100%, man, 100%. And the way I like to figure that out too with people is it's always you can take just about anything, service, and a lot of times even product, and just break it into three main buckets, if you will, right? I'm a big fan of trying to categorize complex things in business and putting things into buckets with little buckets underneath and all that. So onboarding, delivery, and then offboarding / support, right? And usually for the people that are just obsessed with the sales, they get the sale. You'd be surprised. The onboarding is usually not terribly great. The delivery might be decent, right? and then you have the offboarding and the support. And really it's, whether they're obsessed or sales or not, I think it's the first one and the last one that are usually, they provide the most potential and opportunity for you to set the stage and then close the stage in a memorable way. And they get overlooked a lot. And especially when you're trying to, when you're really trying to create a brand too, there's a lot that goes into that. But the best way, once you figure out what you want your brand to kind of be, you've got to find ways to then inject it into the process and all of this stuff. There's a lot more that goes into it than just, a lot of the stuff that gets thrown out there. But you've got to find a way to inject it into the process. So like one of the things that when I'm working with people, and it almost doesn't even matter what the package is. I mean, it could be a marketing package, a website package, launching their whole company. It doesn't matter. Like I'm always jumping in with them and getting that entire thing broken down, get it on paper, both from the end user's perspective and then from internally in the company's perspective. Things get a lot more clear with how the company functions and all of that. And what you do after you've got all that done on paper is you start to see all these touch points that are opportunities to reinforce something, right? Reinforce the brand, reinforce trust, reinforce education. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's just, it's wide open. And usually it's those two bookends that most people really kind of drop the ball with, right? Somebody calls you, you got the sale, or somebody fills something out online and blah, 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 and all that, and you got the sale. And it's like, all right, cool. Well, like, what are we giving them now? What does it actually look like? Are we physically handing them something? Are we sending them anything via emails, laying out what we're going to do and all this stuff? And it's the same thing with the offboarding and the support at the end. Like once it's done, and I will say that the agents, most companies in general do an atrocious job with the offboarding. But if there was ever a group that does a good job at least trying to make somebody feel like something after the transaction or project or whatever is done, they at least do a decent job of it, with closing gifts and stuff like that. You know what I mean? But those two ends of it there is usually the big opportunity.
Yeah, I think the offboarding piece is definitely a heavy one, because we mentioned like getting them into a database and being able to call on them and have them answer your call. Yep. If every time you call them, you're just trying to sell them something, they're not going to answer the phone.
Brutal.
And so being able to, do that offboarding piece while, you mentioned closing gifts, those are awesome. But what does it look like after that? Like, are you following up 6 months down the line saying, how's the house? Like, do you need anything? Can I, talk to you about anything? Like, can I share contact information with a financial advisor or something that provides value down the line after the fact? That I think in real estate, there's a stat out there, right? Like mortgage and realtors are pretty similar in this, where 86 or 87% of people would say that they would use their same person again, but they don't know who to call. Like if that's the case, like we got a problem, right? Like, because that means those people just don't end up going back to the same person. And we all miss in different locations, but that's something we've really focused on. And I know that you would focus on that with the people that
100%. And I would even take it one step further, where it's like, rather than, like you should know what it is that they need, right? Like in that instance there, anybody that bought a house needs their yard taken care of, right? So I don't know, buy them a free trim. You know what I'm saying? Like if you actually put the time and effort to think about it, like you actually know what it is that everybody needs after the sale, even if it's not coming from you. So how do you facilitate that? Has a chance to do something nice, but it's a way to keep touch as well without what you're saying, trying to constantly sell them something. I think that there's, especially in that space, there's always such a humongous opportunity for collaborations and all sorts of really cool things like that. And it doesn't get taken advantage of a lot. It doesn't get taken advantage of a lot in a lot of spaces though, People are busy. We've all got great ideas, right?
Yep.
There's only so much time in the day, though. So
yeah, I do think, like, it is definitely difficult, like you mentioned, where people are kind of going off in a bunch of different directions for 12 months and they end up living the same year over and over. We always talk about 30-year real estate agent, right? Like, okay, sure.
Groundhog's Day.
Thing for 30 years straight. Got it. But it's funny that way. But really it's like you mentioned, you should know what they need. You probably know what they need. It's just a matter of making it systemized so that you can actually use it and do it. And that's where people get stuck, is they try to do it all manually and all of the after delivery becomes, that's right, this is 6 months, I got to send an email, instead of automating it or using something that can help them do it.
I would even take that one step further and almost flip it too, because a lot of what I kind of see these days is, it used to be that people weren't automating things enough, right? And I think to an extent, we've actually gone too far in the opposite direction, where everybody just wants to automate everything, and it's like, well, I'll just fire off 15 emails over the next 12 months. And that means I don't have to pick up the phone and actually call anybody to see how they're doing. So like, I think that you can actually automate yourself into a really big, sterile, cold mess. I've seen it a lot. So I think that when people are putting those things together, you've really got to, you want some, of course, but you've got to pick your points where you're going to maintain that human connection, especially with everything that's going on these days, right? With all the AI and the tech stuff and all of that. I mean, I think that how that's going to turn out, right? Corporate America is going to go berserk with it. Their customer service has already been atrocious. It's just going to get even worse, right? And that provides such an amazing opportunity for people who can provide the human element and more of a personalized approach. But you got to figure out which touch points are the ones that matter with that, because you don't have enough time to make everything personal, right? Nobody does. You're not going to be able to grow like that. But you do have to figure out, okay, so out of these post-sale, we'll just, toss some numbers out there. Out of the post-sale 10 touch points, that are covering these 3 things, and this is why, and all of that, what are the ones that I really should actually do myself? What are the ones that me doing it provides such a significant additional value to it that it would be crazy for me to outsource that or automate it. And that's advice that not a lot of people get. Most of the time they get signed up with this stuff because they're under some kind of guise that they can just get rid of all of this and focus on the more important things. And it's like, well, yes, there's some truth to that, but like, you actually giving a shit and talking to people it's pretty important. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I'm a big proponent. We talk about the automation and pieces, and I think where people really get in trouble with it is that they're not putting in the time to create automation that's custom to themselves, right? Like they're just putting in something saying, ChatGPT, make me an email. They're not putting in the time of putting in the guardrails around it to make it even sound like themselves, right? You get these emails that have freaking M dashes and weird like phrasing and like, they're not even putting in the time to edit the emails.
Isn't that funny how that's become the calling card for that now? That poor M dash, man.
It's so bad. Like that's the first one. Like I've built my voice inside ChatGPT, so some of my, for creating content and stuff for ease of that of putting it into words. And it's like every once in a while it'll spit out one and I'm like, no, I told you to eliminate those. Get rid of that crap.
It hates eliminating it, doesn't it?
I see so many people say that.
Always.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that shows that it's getting very, very human, actually, because we're having to tell it multiple times to do the same thing. So
yeah, it's pretty funny. So but like, I've spent, probably 10 hours just up front of creating those guardrails properly to make sure that that's coming in play. And then it you can utilize it to make it more custom, like you mentioned. And I'm a big proponent of like, in sales starting conversations with automation, because then it kind of has people raise their hands to stuff.
Yeah.
And then, kind of taking it over from there, where we're able to start, using automation to put scheduling in and that kind of stuff, just like we did with this podcast. Send you a link, you schedule a time, this is your time, and we work through it. And so being able to do that, where, that creates a lot of focusability. It creates, your calendar being built
100%.
without having to, manually do it. And then what you're talking about and can focus with the person the whole time.
Yep.
And I think that's super important too, because, if you are trying to build out those manual follow-ups, a lot of times people they don't have the time to do it. So they're not even focused on it when they're doing it. And then the people can feel that.
No,
and
100%.
So that's a big way to kind of counteract that too.
I think that, the further and further we go down into this rabbit hole that we're heading into too, it's like, it seems obvious to me, but it's not obvious in some of the discussions that I've had. And it's like some things should be automated. Okay. Like some things should be automated, and then some things just should not be automated. And it's all dependent on the specifics of what it is that we're talking about, right? We've got, I think I was telling you about this a while ago, but that AI, the guest services thing for the Airbnbs and stuff like that. And it's awesome, man. And it answers their questions right in the app. It meets them where they're at. Verbo to booking.com. It's amazing, right? But most of the time with the guest questions and things like that, they're asking, 80% of the time it's the same questions over and over again, right? But when we were building it, and the guys that we were building it with, everybody was really adamant that if there are problems, the triggers need to happen so that somebody can get on the phone, right? Or somebody else can hop into that chat to start addressing it. I think that's where a lot of the frustration and confusion with all of this stuff is going to come into play here shortly. Is where is the line? Automation is great. I love it. Saves time, efficiencies on both sides. Everybody's always cool with it until a certain point. And what is that point? And then when that happens, what do? And I think you're going to see, especially the big companies and stuff. I think you're going to see, we already see it. You've got a major problem and you just can't talk to anybody. Mm-hmm. You're getting answers that make no sense. Talking on the phone to people that have no idea what they're talking about. So it's just going to be more of that. But I think it'll definitely get more widespread just because of the ease of access of all of it. Which why I say understanding that line is so important, because if you can understand that line and you can automate the stuff that should be automated really, really well, but you can deal with the human side of things also really, really well, and where that line is and all the different situations within your company and stuff, man, you're going to have a huge advantage going forward, humongous advantage.
Yeah, that's one thing I've talked about pretty often in my personal experiences in 2021, when you could throw a rock and hit somebody that needed a refinance at that point, and the deals were just coming in hand over fist. I created automations for everything because I was overworked and needed to kind of make it happen. And I over automated my business, like you've talked about. And then I've also seen it the other side where I have no support with automation. And so now I've kind of got that pendulum that kind of swings back and forth a little bit. And so, we've got the advantage of seeing that, because I'm a, first mover, try to move quickly on things and learn things really quickly. And so I've got, that advantage. And I know there's other people out there like that, but then I also know that there's other people who have not used any of those tools in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. And they hate ChatGPT because it spits out a generic answer because they haven't spent any time to make it their own. Yep. And, it's wild, man. And I think, like you mentioned, the bigger companies, if they're going to go that route, I think we could see a massive push with people utilizing it effectively and finding that line, like you said, being able to really get into it and use it effectively instead of overusing it and making it feel sterile and boring.
M dashes galore, right?
Yeah, M dashes and voice. I've got some. It's crazy because I can now create podcasts with my voice without having to create a podcast, which is nuts.
So crazy, isn't it?
Like it's using a couple of different tools and ChatGPT having my voice, I can say create this and I copy and paste it and then it creates the voice and I'm good to go.
Wild.
It's wild. And effectively that has tools. So instead of I can create voices for all of the employees at this point. So if I got to add a voicemail drop or something into an automation campaign or something like that, I can just create it using their voice instead of, having them record it. They send it to me incorrectly. It doesn't work, like going back and forth. Using that for efficiencies makes sense. Having entire conversations where you're gathering information probably doesn't make sense because there is so many ins and outs to it. So
yeah, it's interesting times ahead for sure.
For sure. So with Startup Street, what is next for you? And I say with Startup Street, but professionally or personally, what's next for you that you're most excited about?
I don't know, man. That's a really good question. I already do what I absolutely love. I don't really want to do anything else. If I won, $100 million tomorrow, here's something I would do. I would buy a bigger, better building. All right. For where I'm working. But in terms of what's next, I mean, it's just, more the same with that and keep going with it and trying to grow it and, but making sure that the quality stays there as well. The quality of the business consulting along with the art of the design element of everything. Other than that though, I guess like I've got that platform that we built called the Startup District, and that's really cool. And it connects startups with investors and things like that. And I had a little bit of success with it last year on some good connections that happened. People got funded, nothing, we're not talking about like millions and millions of dollars here. Then I was just in there the other day and I was like, cool, man, more people are signing up, and it's just kind of, because I haven't had a whole lot of time to play around with that because as you know, like we finally got that up off the ground like last summer, something like that, and then me and the wife went on vacation and we came back and we went on another vacation and I was like, all right, cool, let's get rocking and rolling with this. And then the hurricanes came, and it's like, once that happened, it was like, all right, so I got to reprioritize some stuff here. The cool platform, blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, I love it. I think it's really awesome because it actually has some scalability to it. It's with what I do at Startup Street, like it's just inherently hard to scale. I think that people get the two terms growth and scale really screwed up a lot of times. Like scale is just about ratios and how nice those ratios are from the growth determines the scalability of things. Right. And like with what we're doing, I mean, you add 10 more clients, you got to add 3 more people and everybody gets a little bit of scale when they grow. Right. But client services is just inherently not very easy to scale. Whereas with the platform, highly scalable. So yeah, I really am looking forward to where that can go. What I was saying before, like after the hurricanes and stuff, I think that a lot of times when things go haywire in our lives, business or whatnot, like you have to really shift your mindset out of we're going to crush it for the next 6 months into let's keep the boat afloat, right? Let's keep the boat afloat. And that is a hard shift to go through though. If you are hardwired to try to crush everything in existence because that's who you are and that's what you do, and you have to really put on the brakes sometimes when things happen and get your own head together, because if you think you're going to go through all sorts of stuff happens in life, right? We all know that. Everybody listening to this knows that. If you think you're going to be going through what is one of those substantial moments in life and still crush it, like be careful. be really, really careful, because a lot of things can get much, much worse than you ever realized if you don't get your head together. So I had already learned that, I learned that the hard way multiple times previously. So like when going through all that, I was like, all right, you're going to have to minimize some goals here for the time being and all that. And the platform just kind of went by the wayside. But, now that I finally got the momentum for everything going again, it's amazing how fast momentum can get crushed. And it's amazing how long it takes to build it back up again. Another thing that I've learned repeatedly over the years, and with that I didn't have a choice. I had to go through it all over again. But I am looking forward to that with the platform. I think it's really, really cool. The reason why I built it is that there's a lot of platforms out there already, right? And most of them, though, are like they're Reg A, Reg CF type things, which are inherently, for most people, very expensive for the legal paperwork and the SEC stuff and all of that. The platforms, usually, if they accept you on there, they take 6, 7, 8% of the fundraising. There's other fees. I mean, don't get me wrong, it can be very, very lucrative for people when they're on some of these things. But man, is it a tall ask for 95% of people just to do that? I mean, who's like, yeah, I've got this company we're trying to launch and all that, and we need to raise some money. Does anybody have an initial $75,000 for us to raise the money? Right. I was talking to somebody. This group does a massive amount of Reg A paperwork for startups. I mean, the most in the whole country, right? $65,000 just to fill out get the paperwork stuff filled out is where we're at now. So I'm like, there has to be something else. Like, what about everybody else? Why does nobody else have a home? And then for your angel investor types, which, the word angel investor, I mean, we're basically just talking about somebody that has some cash that wants to get involved in something, right? Where are they going to go that is a huge marketplace that allows them to filter things that are really not just a micro level of industries and whatnot, and not just also filter it by stage of the startup, but also by location? Because believe it or not, in every single city, there are a lot of people there that have a lot of cash that want to be part of something. And when they want to be part of it, they want to be part of it in their own city. Like they actually want to be part of it. They don't want to be a faceless investor on a platform and get their shares and their updates. Like that's the difference between, these different investor groups and whatnot. The one that I'm talking about is actually really substantial, but like, where would they even go? So on both sides of it, I just always looked at this, like, where are these people going to go? How come they don't have a home? Screw it. I'll build them a home. And I did it. And it's pretty cool. There's no cost for anybody to list on there. List your startup for free. Investors, I've got like I don't ever hold anybody to it at this point, but I've got a $200 yearly membership for the investors to be able to actually reach out to said startups to facilitate the communication. But I mean, after that, like, there's no fees. I'm not here to micromanage anything, it's just bring people together. And some people have tried to start things like that kind of in the past, and talking with a couple of them, it's like, well, it just wasn't really unless you're going to host the fundraising and ding them on the fundraising and all that, there's really not a lot of money in it. And I'm like, okay, well, that's cool. I really don't care if there's no money in it. I don't care if it never makes me a dime. The only thing I like seeing is that people with great ideas can go post it, and then other people who want to be part of that can see it, and they can get together and achieve whatever it is that they're setting out to achieve. And, truth be told, there obviously, with the services that I do at Startup Street and stuff, there's overlap there, right? So it's not that there will be nothing that ever comes out of that. But as far as the platform itself, like, I love it. I think it's needed. I think it's criminal that something like that hasn't existed. And if you're me, that eats, sleeps, and breathes this stuff and has for my whole entire life, I think it is. I think it's a great tool with great opportunity. Let's just see if I have the time to see it through here next year or so.
I think no, man. We could talk about technology and open source and all of that kind of stuff, and really that's where my brain goes with what you're saying there is kind of like making those connections a little bit more open source. And Napster was the original open source, right? Like just being able to kind of access stuff that you should have been able to access with the technology in place. And that's, we could talk about greed and corporate greed and money and all that stuff forever. But, just being able to set something up like that and kind of being that middle ground of being able to build some place where people can come shake hands, I think is, if there's one thing that business should rely on, it's that. And then if we talk
community,
about
man,
exactly.
Community. Like, I don't get anything out of this. I'm cool with that. Please use it. Here you go. Go nuts. Have fun with it.
Create some connections.
Make it happen.
What was that? Blue Fishing, I think, was the book. I think was one of those where he talked about that, where he's just like creating connections between people. And it's a good one. It might have the title wrong, so now I got to look it up after the episode. Okay. But it's a really good book about just connecting people and just being that middle ground. And you might not see a reward from it, like you said on the initial, but there's always something that comes back around, because then you become the go-to person for people. It's
good for the soul. It's why I love doing the mentorship stuff that I do at University of Tampa, and to a smaller extent over at HCC. I like that stuff. It's good for the soul. It's interesting. It's engaging. It's volunteer work, right? But it's so fulfilling. And I find that stuff really, really important these days. It helps to balance out some of the insanity of the day to day.
And just getting the reward of knowing that you did the right thing is one of the best things.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I do it every single day, all day if I could.
We all would, I think. There's your win. What'd you say? Win $100 million? There you go. That's what you would do.
Right. There you go. Yep. Open up the huge office and just, all right, everybody come on in.
Yeah.
Who needs what?
I love it. Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate your time today. And I think there's some good stuff in here that we'll be able to get out there for people. And if you've got an ideal client as far as Startup Street goes, who do you think would be somebody that should be reaching out to you?
Really, it's everybody falls into two buckets, where it's like I'm thinking about launching something and I need a hand with it, or we're already up and running, but I kind of want to get this to the next level, and I can work with everybody in between. If you don't even have a name for your company yet, that's great. I've got other clients that are on the NASDAQ and stuff, you know what I mean? So it's everybody in between. It just depends on what you want to do, and the only way you kind of figure that out is start having the conversation. So everybody's more than welcome to go to the website, fill out a contact form. I'll always give everybody at least 30 minutes. I might not have all the answers, but I can always at least ask a nice handful of questions and things to consider going forward to provide some clarity on things. So
cool. Well, we appreciate your time today, and to everybody else, we'll see you on the next one.
Ooh-ah. Thanks, man.
Today's episode of Beyond the Guidelines comes to a close, but the story doesn't end here. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe so you never miss the next one. And if you'd like to share your own story on the show, check out the link in the description to connect with us. Until next time, keep rewriting the rules and remember to go beyond the guidelines.